minutes to wrap up the idea of and the concept of physical internet as it relates to supply chain 4.0. So, by the way, I'll start by saying that the first time I heard about supply chain 4.0 in the midst of the growth of Industry 4.0 was while I was in Austria, and those guys that live just besides the German were telling that in fact the physical internet and all that surrounds it was basically the essence of supply chain 4.0. So I'm not telling this is the case, but clearly physical internet and everything we're working around it it should be a big enablers toward supply chain 4.0 and also leveraging it. So let me now okay, so basically the physical internet has been put together, has been conceived as an answer to recognition that we're facing a grand challenge in the overall areas of supply chain, logistics, and transportation, which is to try to improve by an order of magnitude the economical, environmental, and societal capability, efficiency, resilience, and sustainability of fulfilling humanity's needs for physical object services. So moving them, getting them deployed, using them, supplying them, etc. So the full notions of getting access to the physical objects and or getting access to their functionality. So this means reducing price, dealing with disruption, crisis, development, economic development opportunities on the economic side, environmental side, the greenhouse gas emission, energy consumption, waste reduction, traffic congestions, and reduce the impact of disasters and climate change. And the same goes on the societal side with the people that work in those domains and the society at large that we're trying to serve with better, faster delivery, more service capabilities, and persistence to pandemics like we're living now. So through the last decade, this has been growing, starting in my lab in 2006, and then went public 2011. Then now it's much more spread around the world, and essentially the logic is to be humble and understand that in other domains like ICT, they have faced the kind of challenge that we are facing, and they have succeeded in transforming themselves greatly. And can't we learn from them? So that's here is using the digital internet as a metaphor to inspire, guide, and steer transformations in supply chain logistics so as to meet the grand challenge. So it's not to copy the digital internet, but rather to inspire from it. So technically, the physical internet, the definitions have grown through time, but essentially it's an hyperconnected global logistics systems that enables seamless open asset sharing and flow consolidation, multi-party, multi-modals across the world at various scales. And through standardized encapsulation, modularization protocols and interface, so as to meet the grand challenge we mentioned. We say hyperconnected because basically the component and actors are to be intensely interconnected, multiple layers, ultimately anywhere, anytime. And these layers are clearly digital, like in digital supply chains, but also physical, operational, business, legal, and interpersonal, because we're talking millions and millions of people active in those domains. So what we're trying to do essentially is to help address big issues, right? One right now is that there's much more need for e-commerce and omni-channel supply chains to work, to be efficient, to deliver on the merchandise. We saw it with COVID. We need much more power into it, and all the current players and assets are being completely overloaded by the system, and there's need to improve this. So essentially, with the physical internet, we're saying if everybody on its own corner tries to develop the kind of supply chains that is depicted here, okay, it's going to cost huge amount. There's going to be huge waste, etc. So there's need to connect much more on multiple facets to avoid, okay, those silo mentality, even within companies, within industry, across the world. So making sure that fulfillment centers can get more shared, point of sales lockers, smart lockers. Also the X's you see here are logistics hubs where we can make sure that the items will be transshipped, cross-docked, or transited so that they go efficiently from source to destination and get it in the speed and convenience that the consumers are expecting right now, and do it in a very societal efficiency way and vitally functioning for the companies in there. So the physical internet, it has numerous building blocks, okay? Modular containers, equipment, technologies that is able to make this happen in a smooth way. Standard logistics protocol like TCP/IP in the internet, facilities and ways that are designed to play on an open access level, a global logistics monitoring system, open logistics decisional and transactional platforms, smart data-driven AI analytics, optimization, and simulation, and players like logistics service providers that are certified as knowing how to do it, behaving correctly, and capable of delivering the merchandise here. So as we talk about the supply chain 4.0 and digital supply chain, it's important here that I make emphasis that even though a lot of what we do in the physical internet touches the physical items, there's a lot that happens on the digital sides, so that we make happen this seamless, trustworthy, ubiquitous monitoring, visibility, traceability, and transactions. Here I'm using schematic. I couple the marketplaces and platforms that we see popping up, like Convoy and others, the Internet of Things with all the sensors and digital device intercommunication that we're now capable of having, so that we have the pulse of what's happening in live. Blockchain to make sure that we can trust whatever we see from those visibility and traceability issues, and the transactions can be also be trustworthy. And simple link to maneuver between the truck, containers, boxes, and final products, and that we can find our way through this in simple ways. It's also, there's a lot that is happening, and in 15 minutes I can't cover it all, but industry is getting moving in those directions. Countries are getting to move. So here I'm showing like relative to distribution and fulfillment, you've got like the shared distribution centers like Americold in the cold chain, ES3 in the food. Then you've got the on-demand storage marketplaces like Flex.com and several others across the world. Fulfillment web services like Dark Store, like Fulfillment by Amazon, etc. They're playing those games. They're getting to physical internet type of ways to do. So all of the things that we need to do to make happen this multi-party, multimodal, highly hyper-connected way of doing requires a lot of smartness, a lot of digital prowess to make sure, okay, that we're supporting the live multi-party, multi-agent protocols, predictions, and decisions that we need to take. Here I'm showing an example in the parcel logistics industry where we have to look and redesign the networks, the multi-tier of networks, design the service offers that are going to be offered to the customers that are going to be needing to be much faster and reliable than we have vehicle routing, containerized consolidation, parcel routings, and all of this requires on the background a lot of smartness through analytics, AI, data science, digital twins, heuristics, machine learning, optimization, simulation. So we have teams and there are many researchers, innovation boxes here that are at work to make this happen. Here's an example, okay, not getting to the details of it, but if we just take a logistics service provider, okay, like we mentioned, Americold, could be any others here, that basically have to transform themselves from signing long-term contracts with with the clients, and now they have to play a much faster game, much smarter game, so they need to equip themselves, okay, in ways that they've never done in the past to be able to react fast and offer the services and solutions that the new customers are wanting in there. Automation is all part of this, okay, making sure that we go seamlessly, vector free as much as possible. So there's a revamping, reconceptualization, and equipping of logistics hub, warehousing centers, etc., with smart automation, flexible, as well as a lot of robotization through all of this. At a big picture level, what's happening is that we're in the midst of recognizing and shaping new infrastructures that are technically logistics infrastructure and supply chain infrastructure that are going to be building upon energy infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, and ICT infrastructure, so that and all of them interconnected, so that basically we become much better at this. And like we're having in COVID right now, we can have that we would dream of having with COVID right now is having a persistent, reliable, and smooth going, okay, infrastructure that is going to bring the essentials and critical products for fight pandemics where they need smartly and efficiently. So the game is growing a lot. Okay, now in Europe they've launched, okay, last year their new roadmap toward implementing physical internet all across Europe, and they want this to be kind of a model for the world that climbs from 2015 in the past and now climbs to 2040 and shows the various steps in getting toward a fully mature physical internet at the nodes level, the facilities level, the network services that are offered, the governance of this new physical internet. How do we get access and adoption, and how do we work with the system level functionality, going from at the beginning physical intranets and climbing to full physical internets all across industries in the world. Like I said, this is getting much extended just in the last few months. Okay, there's been a large conference in Shenzhen directly on this. So China has been exemplifying. There were people from industry, from government, talking how they're going to take more and more activity and actions and engagement in the physical internet. And a few days ago, there was one in Tokyo, Japan, again, where industry, governments, okay, were present and shaping this, embedding this into their forthcoming plans of evolutions. So when we deal with physical internet, as we're shaping this, we're always working at three levels. First, enabling across the board order of magnitude improvement of economic, environmental, and societal efficiency, resilience, and sustainability. So we're trying to improve the playing field here, okay, across territories, industries, and businesses worldwide. Then the next is to enable order of magnitude capability improvement for businesses, industries, and territories, like much better at omni-channel, much more responsive, make happen synchro-modality, agility, scalability, trustability, etc. And on top of it is enable competitiveness improvement of the smart hyperconnected businesses, industries, and territories that are exploiting or enabling the physical internet. So with this, that's going to be this been a fast wrap up of physical internet as pertinent to the supply chain 4.0 movement. So now pass the ball to Scott, I think.
Yes, thank you, Benoit. And what I'd like to do now is I'm going to pull up the screen and move this to, and we're going to rapidly move right into Thorsten's presentation. Are you seeing my screen?
Scott, if I can share my own screen, I just cut out a few slides with your time, you know,
Okay.
to get a little bit faster, so we have time for some Q&A. I just like reduced the presentation a little bit to go through it faster.
All right, let me make you the presenter, and we'll do it that way. Yep.
Perfect. All right. All right, so now you should now see my PowerPoint, right?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, and to all the viewers, our apologies for the delay. I guess we're now used to this and have to be resilient. So the talk is right on money, I believe. Benoit, thank you so much. I think our two presentations align very well in that sense that yours is very forward-looking, you know, more comprehensive, while this will more focus on, okay, how can companies actually engage in that? And with that being said, what I will talk about today is resilient digital supply networks. And I will start off just with this picture, because I believe everybody does recognize that nowadays. Everybody has very strong feelings about this, and especially in a logistics and supply chain environment, we're painfully aware what impacts this pandemic had on everything, right? So everybody remembers the big toilet paper crisis that we endured last year, and hopefully we're through with that. The PPE supply chain, where we were struggling to provide appropriate safety gear for our first responders, healthcare workers, and everybody in the end. Europe now starts to enforce N95 masks in public transport and so on. And again, the supply chain is struggling to keep up with demand, with quality demand, and so on. Of course, ventilators, a big struggle, still a struggle in some regions. Cars, electric cars. Audi just last week, I think, announced that they had to reduce production capacity because they could not source enough chips for their cars. And cars nowadays are pretty intelligent and have a lot of electronics in there. When you can't secure those, well, your production is halted. Food supply chain. A lot of the processing plants were affected by the pandemic. And garlic. Apparently, a lot of garlic is sourced internationally and not homegrown. So we all were affected by that in one way or another. So when we look at the different types of industries that were affected, it went across all industries, I believe. And while COVID-19 did not cause the problems in supply chain, it really exposed how fragile our global supply chains actually are. And tying that back to what Mathieu was talking about, a lot of that has to do with information exchange, right? While this pandemic exposed this fragility in our global supply chain organization, it now kind of reinforced the call for more resiliency across the board, right? So now it is on top of the agenda of decision makers, of policy makers, and of all companies that were affected, because they really don't want to go through that again, right? When we look at what technology has to do with that, well, when we look at some companies that manage pretty well to keep their operations running, I'm thinking of Amazon, I'm thinking of Tesla. They heavily invested in, or already before, but also during the pandemic, invested in AI-based digital technologies. I'm thinking digital twin. Benoit also mentioned that. Wearables, like little smartwatches and other gadgets that allow to keep social distancing traceable. Vision systems with a temperature component to make sure that you identify rapidly if somebody has an elevated temperature, and so on and so forth. Ford had an article out in that, how they use smartwatches to keep people keep a distance and trace contacts. And the next challenge will be, okay, now we invested very rapidly in these technologies for a very distinct reason. Social distancing, identifying sick workforce, basically keeping our operations running. In the next step, hopefully, when the pandemic is in the rearview mirror, how can we use these technologies that are now available to us in a manner to improve our operations, right? Overall, I think we can all agree that companies and supply chains really need to evolve and embrace digital transformation. And again, that connects directly to what Benoit was saying. So what I will just briefly touch upon before we go into Q&A is the transition that we see from supply chain management to digital supply networks. Then just give you a glimpse of the key capabilities and the playbook that we have been developing, and then just reflect on that real quick. The talk will be based on our brand new book that came out last summer, very timely book that looks at, okay, how can companies or any interested person learn how to transform their supply chain, you know, how to bring the supply chain in a digital age, and what are the key factors that you need to be aware of, and then how can you assess and implement these digital technologies in your own operation, right? All right. When we look at the traditional view on supply chain management, it's a chain, it's supply chain, right? So when we look at the traditional process, we often talk about develop, plan, source, make, deliver, return, right? So a depiction at least is one directional. And when we look at the flows, well, the material flows also in a direction from the supplier to the plant to the distribution center and finally to the customer, while money goes the opposite way and information is exchanged across the chain. While this is of course not 100% accurate, because of course information is exchanged a little bit broader, nevertheless a lot of the information exchange is between the two nodes that are next to each other, right? A lot of truck drivers still have a paper-based documentation that they need signed, and then they scan it, send it overseas for digitization, and then get back the digital copy, which just adds a lot of potential for errors, and of course the timeliness is questionable. What we propose in the book is basically a transition from that linear view to a more network-based view. And what we mean by that is the digital supply network transforms that sequential supply chain process to a more network structure, okay? And not build around processes, but build around capabilities. And it's mainly focused on the customer, right? Fulfilling the requirements and demands of the customer. It embraces disruptive digital technologies and has a digital core right at the center, right? That connects everything. And this is actually crucial, and I think very aligned with Benoit's vision of the physical internet, right? We need that digital nucleus that allows us to exchange information and to keep everybody connected. What it is not, it's not a technology implementation framework. Okay? That is very important, because we won't tell any company exactly how to do it. That is for everybody to figure out themselves. But it will give you tools to assess. It will give you tools to start your journey, right? What we aim to is a critically assessing the status quo, and then developing your own strategic vision and implementation roadmap that aligns with your specific company, with your specific supply network, right? When we look at digital transformation across the different levels, we have to be very aware that on the part level, we have a very good understanding of what's happening in the process and the operation. And the further we go up in the chain, up to the digital supply network, we're dealing with a lot of complexity that is not just technology enabled, right? We can theoretically exchange data with a lot of different companies, with a lot of different stakeholders, but then there's the competition, there's policies, there's politics, there's export control that add additional layers of complexity to the technology or technical issue at hand, right? So we have to keep that in mind, that it's that supply chain or digital supply networks, it's not just a technology question, how to implement it and how to make it happen, right? It has to do also with politics, with with global, yeah, the global environment. And I really liked what I saw with Benoit, that that framework that he, or that roadmap that he presented, that it had that policy clearly represented there, because I think that is crucial to really get the effect and the impact that we need. All right, just briefly touching upon the key DSN capabilities that we emphasize. We have the digital development, where we really look into, okay, how do we develop the next generation product? How do we develop an upgrade to our product? And how can we make use of all the information that we can now connect or collect during the usage phase of a product? You know, you wear your running shoes. Everybody is running differently. The weight distribution is differently. The foot is shaped differently. Can we collect information there, phase it back to the digital development, and build a custom-made shoe just for you that fits perfectly based on the tons of data that we collect during the use of the previous generation shoe, right? Synchronized planning. I mean, that speaks for itself. Very important to align our different capacities. Intelligent supply. Okay, we have to have prediction models. We have to have risk models that allow us to really anticipate where we should source from and how to do that. The smart factory, and that is a topic very close to my heart. Smart manufacturing, where we really can utilize data, the use of data inside development to make our processes safer, cheaper, and better, higher quality in the end. Dynamic fulfillment. Amazon is leading that charge, I think, and is very visionary in that sense. And at the end, the connected customer. We need to make sure that we listen to the customer, that the customer is involved, not just, you know, going to the store and buying a product, but involved in the greater scheme of things, from digital development all across the capabilities. Okay, now coming to the playbook and what we present. I will not go into detail. Just one thing that I wanna single out is the one in the middle. How will we win? Because when I previously talked, I gave a keynote a few weeks back, and I got a very good question. I said, like, hey, a lot of companies are struggling. Is it really a question of how will we win? And my answer was pretty straightforward. And I said, like, hey, winning can be interpreted in a variety of ways. And right now, for a lot of companies, winning means surviving, right? Keeping the business afloat, paying their employees, making ends meet, right? So winning in this sense might just mean, okay, we meet our customers' demand, we are able to deliver, and we can pay our bills and survive until there's better times and we can thrive again, right? Other companies still are doing very well, and can interpret that in the more, you know, we want to win the competition type of interpretation. The last thing that I just want to touch upon is when you develop your digital supply network strategy, it has to go like the business version of view on that. It has to go hand in hand with the technology capabilities. Okay, and that has a lot to do with upskilling, with what is available to you, and an understanding of what technologies are capable of doing and what they are not capable of doing. Because we all hopefully know that technology is not, or for example, AI or a digital twin or so, fascinating topics that can have a real impact, but they're not a silver bullet. It has to be aligned with the strategy. It has to be aligned with the company's vision and their processes. And that aligns then to the digital supply network strategy, both the technology capability and the supply network strategy. Okay, summing up, COVID-19 exposed fragile supply chains. They did not necessarily cause them. They were here before. So the underlying issues preceded the pandemic. Reshoring, that was often called for, does not solve the issue. Okay. Agility, resiliency, and visibility are key moving forward. Companies that have a digital core or plan to invest in a digital core and mindset have a distinct advantage currently, and moving out of the pandemic even more. Investing in technology for technology's sake is doomed to fail. I'm a very strong believer in that, and I saw multiple examples in that. We have to align the digital supply network strategy with our business strategy and objective. And probably the most important sentence I will say, I believe this is not optional. This will happen. And if companies do not think about that and are not engaging in this transformation, they will be left behind. And that will be much more devastating than this pandemic. All right. Thank you very much. Please order the book, and I give it back to Scott.
Thank you, Thorsten. Would you go back to your playbook slide, please, real quickly?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and let's put that up. And I don't want to, first of all, I profoundly apologize for my connectivity problems. I've done 70 of these webinars, and this is the first morning that I have encountered that. So, but I really apologize for the disruption to our speakers, first and foremost, but to our attendees, secondly. And I don't want to assume that Benoit and Thorsten have more time, but if you do, we'll go over a little bit and we'll do some Q&A, and I'd like to do that on behalf of our attendees from around the world. So I think that, you know, when I looked at the list of people that signed up for this webinar, we have a mix of people from all around the world, globally, internationally, in the US, North America. I think this slide is interesting in that, Benoit, you presented a very nice sort of 4.0 picture of what's happening to the industry, supply chain and logistics. It's sort of a good to great question. If I'm an organization and I'm not very mature, where do I begin? How do I start with this transformation from where I'm at to you know, to sort of progress my maturity in relationship to physical internet, for example?
Yeah, so that's a great question. First, the key when I present the overall vision, I have to emphasize on what's to become, but I try to put emphasis also on the roadmap, and that we need to start with quick wins and at the level that needs to be done. So through now 10 years of being talking about these and evolving, it is clear that small or big, the pathway toward transformation and leveraging things like the physical internet and digital supply chain, you basically need to be destabilized, not sitting well in your seat. You need to know that if you keep going what you've been doing, okay, you're gonna hit a wall, that things are not gonna progress. With COVID, it's survival that is at stake, but it's way beyond. So try to develop capabilities that are gonna make you a winner. So it starts by understanding where we are and what limits ourselves. I'm dealing with small companies, okay, like the furniture manufacturers that sell their stuff through the web and have clients like Wayfair, Amazons, and others there. Well, they face huge difficulties, okay? Whether I've dealt with companies that were in Bangladesh, okay, that are in Canada, in the US, everywhere around the world, and essentially everybody's facing the pressure from the big players to deliver fast, make it cheap, etc. And for most people, they just see this and say, listen, I can't compete in this. So that's where now when they face this, now they have to understand that they have to begin to think outside the box that they framed themselves, the paradigms that they've been playing, they don't work anymore. So now they have to think, hey, what can be done? And sometimes once they understood this, there are tons of little things that they can do that are cheap, easy to do, that will get them in the right directions. And sometimes at the beginning, well, we're gonna have to pay a little bit more price to get in there. Like, for example, the market wants you to be able to deliver next day for all across the US. If you try to do it by yourself, it's going to take you years to achieve this. Okay? Now there's ways, I've shown a few in my talk, okay, that will now tomorrow they can make this happen. You just decide, sign, and make it happen. Now clearly they're not perfect, okay, so you're gonna have to pay some price. But if the market is really driving you in that direction, then then this is possible. So I look at what do we want to become, what are the hurdle, the bottleneck, and then begin small. Okay, like think of a radar with several ways to improve, and you can climb all the way to the end and like to be great, but start good and see what steps you can do. Build on that, get the trust, get the confidence, get demonstration that you can make this happen, get funds to do more.
Yeah, if I can just add two things, I couldn't agree more, Benoit. Maybe two little things that you already touched upon, but in my experience working with smaller companies, but also larger companies that engage in that digital transformation journey, it is crucial to have a long-term strategy that you know where you want to go and how to you space out the technology implementation. You know, you first need to make the sensor network happen, to collect the data, then analyze the data, and then phase it back into your analytics and your insight development. That's all great, but it takes time. And these long-term projects oftentimes don't align with, you know, people want to see results. So building in these little, you know, wins or saying, okay, now we can display the data. That's not the end goal, but visualizing the data after 6 months shows, okay, there's progress. We have something we did not have before, and that helps to align the vision across all levels of the company. The other is see it as a learning, a learning journey as well. You have to upskill your people, your human capital, right? And even if a project might fail or take longer or is delayed, you're qualifying your people, and capability creates opportunity, right? Once they understand what they can do with data, once they are excited about what they can do with analytics, they come up with great ideas because they know the process better than anybody else. But oftentimes they're not aware what is possible with technology, and engaging them in projects, basically teaching them what is possible generally, they can apply that to their own process and make it better in the future. So you're building a better company, a better capability, and that will essentially lead to opportunity in the future, which is hard to measure, and companies hate that because you can't put a price tag on that or ROI on it.
Yeah. So 10 seconds, but the way I think more and I try to explain people is the new generation has been born playing computer games, okay? And in computer games, you start in world 1, at level 1. And then when you're good, you get to level 2, you get to level 3, and each time you get more. But remember, you have had fun at every level, okay? So, and you gain at every level. So you have to think this way, not try to go to world 58, okay, in one shot, but rather climb and get to learn and enjoy and make sure that you're gaining at each level.
Yeah. And I assume that and that's a great, I love the response that you gave. One of the things that we've been talking about in this series is the role of industrial and systems engineers in helping build these migration strategies. And so, you know, I think it really emphasizes the role that industrial and systems engineers can play in terms of leading and shaping and facilitating large-scale organizational transformation. Jim Tompkins, who's done a number of webinars for us, you both know him very well, talked about, you know, continuous improvement versus re-engineering versus reinvention. And so really both of you are arguing for reinvention and major transformation. Somebody's got to lead that. Somebody's got to have a vision and have a sense of how to direct conversation so that you create a roadmap that's effective and efficient. So I think you're calling for that too, I suspect, if I'm reading between the lines a little bit.
Well, I can start on this. I completely concur with you. So it is clear that, for example, myself, I took a big bet, okay, like several years ago, when I was gonna go and say, okay, let's engage into the physical internet, because I knew it was this kind of big game changer, but also it changes your life. Okay, you just cannot get in there with nothing. So, but somehow in the industrial engineering we preach, okay, a system view, okay, transdisciplinary, dealing with people, technology, business side, societal, and all this. And today we face big challenges, and somehow I feel that as a community, sometimes we think a bit too small. Okay, we're well into this niche where we are, while industrial and systems engineers can have impact at a much grander scale and attack directly, okay, many of today's great challenge. I know of several that are doing it, but I think we can do much more than this. So going to our addressing the challenges, I will make one nuances though. One nuance is that yes, addressing the grand challenge, but you cannot just think about the reconcepting, the re-engineering, the fundamental, which I do a lot, but we do a lot of things also to make sure that there's a roadmap, that there are people that can start and do the little steps that are going that direction. But overall, as industrial and systems engineer, clearly I'm among those that will promote as much as possible for us to get engaged in so many avenues that are the challenge for industry, challenge economy, and challenge to society and the environment overall. We have our place.
Yeah, let me just add real quick. Of the four authors of the book, 3 are industrial engineers. So there's a reason for that, and I believe these are complex challenges with multidisciplinary perspectives. And I mean, they're called industrial and systems engineers for a reason. So we think in systems. Systems are inherently complex. So I think that's a challenge that industrial engineers are exceptionally qualified to address. If not we, who else, right?
Yeah.
Let's have fun with it.
So let me add one aspect that is very important as we tackle things that are big. Okay, I took the challenge at Georgia Tech to help solve the PPE supply chain and distribution across campus. Okay, we're wanting to restart the research engine at Georgia Tech. We're talking big stuff here with I'm dealing with 20-some buildings, hundreds of labs, thousands of researchers, and clearly to the scale of the world this is small, but already this is complex. Okay, and it's like herding cats. It's not obvious here. So but when we got into this, okay, we learned pretty fast that we have to, yes, we're going to bring to the picture, but we have to listen and connect drastically with other people that are from environment, okay, that are from health, that are from biology, that are from all kind of technology fields, and obviously with computing, because yes, we have the idea, but if we're going to have rapid response and make it happen, okay, not just saying, oh, here's the idea, but really making it happen, like what we've developed for the last 6 months, we are driving all the supply and distribution of PPE on campus, and nobody has to order at anything. And we had like 17 special orders through all those 6 months, okay, which is ridiculously small, okay, compared to what we're doing. But to do this, we have to play this transdisciplinary game, okay, that is at stake. If we are allowing this and get the confidence in ourselves to be able to play with other disciplines, okay, on an equal basis, okay, we are going to get much stronger and have society take a profit from our capabilities.
That's great. I wanted to real quickly circle back on something that you mentioned, Benoit. So what I heard you say was that the transformation migration strategies. This is a big deal. It's a big initiative. It's going to take lots and lots of work, and you can't do it alone. So what I heard you say is that the ability to identify critical sort of strategic partners that can help you with your migration strategy. I think we've always talked about partnerships, but not at the level that we're talking about them now today. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, clearly, as we transform, it's very rare, okay, that companies from huge dinosaur and huge players, okay, to small tiny businesses, it's rare that they have all the capabilities inside to be able to address the scale, the scope of the change, the degree of transformation that is at stake. They are outside their comfort zone, okay, and they can get rapidly, okay, into dangerous turfs if they're not cautious. So clearly, surrounding ourselves with better than us partners at what they do is paramount. The difficulty is to find these, okay, is to identify what kind of partners do we need, what could make sense, are they good players, etc. And there's no magic here, okay? You have to connect, you have to try, you're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna learn, and with time, you're gonna understand that you've developed a nice little ecosystem, okay, that gets you better. Now, when I deal with physical internet, though, I say there are two levels, okay? Is when I'm transforming, when I'm trying to enable, to make things happen. But then, as this grows, then I must learn to leverage what has already been done. And that becomes very, very important. And at that stage, now there's no more things like strategic alliance, partnerships, etc. It's just play with the protocols, use the capabilities that are there, and let's go. Okay, so on multiple facets. So there's this the zone is the transformation, okay, when we have to change things, get us enabled to make happen, and then and then we have to learn and play this new game, okay, that yeah, in this new field that is developing.
Yeah, that's what Jim Collins talked about in his book Good to Great, is the technology accelerators. So, yeah, you know, who's going to partner with me to help build things versus what's sort of off the shelf? What can I make versus what do I have to buy? And to your point, I can't make it alone, so I've got to have partners to help me make it. But then I can also buy some technology accelerators that are already proven technologies, and it's the blending of those two things together.
Yeah. If I can add one thing here, Scott and Benoit, what I strongly believe in is, yes, partnerships are essential, because of course you cannot develop all that by yourself or implement it by yourself. But this will really define how good your company will interact on the market in the future. So you have to have a base understanding of what you're buying into and what is done. So having a small project that your employees develop themselves, even so you could buy it off the shelf, might be worth it, just so they understand what data means, what the insights mean, and how they are developed. And that is again more the upskilling and the building that base layer of understanding. And then you can buy a system from a qualified supplier, I don't know, Rockwell or whatever. But you would have a better understanding what you actually buy and what they actually can do and what it means when you sign the contract on data ownership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I concur with you. Okay, that when you've got the time and the degrees of freedom, that is an excellent avenue. They learn to do things. I will turn your argument around. Okay, just spin with it and put it at another level. Too many executives, okay, are disconnected from all this reality. Okay, and especially in small medium companies. Okay, so. The best ones I'm dealing with and I've interacted with, okay, the guys at the top, guys and gals at the top, okay, the 5-10 people that actually make that company, okay, there are hundreds of people, but those are the ones driving transformation and evolution, okay. Tell me how those are connected. They know the field, okay, they know the potential, they're willing to explore, etc. And now together they are trusting each other and working together with the CEO, okay, COO being among the ones that are connecting the most and driving all this, okay. That's where I see companies spinning and doing great stuff, okay. The worst I've seen are when you've got great people that are thinking at the lower and mid level that have superb ideas, but when they try to pop it up, okay, they're facing, what the heck are you talking about, okay? Don't bring me results, okay, and they have no idea that those guys and gals, okay, could be getting the leverage that are going to save this company and make it great, and they just get thrown away. So I'm telling that we have to be careful at both sides. Let the basis learn and grow, but also let's make sure that the executives and the people that are at the leadership of the company and or the business unit, whatever, that they are dirtying themselves and getting in the field and learning the stuff.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
I
could
think
agree.
to sort of wrap this up, I think we've had some great Q&A. You both did a great job being resilient. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. One thing I wanted to sort of close with is, so in summary, I'd say, quote, this supply chain 4.0, I think it's fairly well defined. Would you both agree with that? I mean, I think we have a pretty good ability to define what supply chain 4.0 looks like. I think, Benoit, you showed an example of people have thought through how this is going to evolve the next 10, 15 years. So I think, you know, that sort of exists if you study it and you read it and you think about it. Now, it's probably some things we've missed. There's some things that are blurry. There's some things that aren't there that will be there. I mean, obviously, technology evolves rapidly. But in general, I think supply chain 4.0 is reasonably well defined. Would you agree or not agree with that?
Okay, I'll be cautious here. I respond. Okay, I'm careful about buzzwords. Okay, so and even though physical internet has some of this, physical internet as deep things, what it is we can define. I've lived through Industry 4.0 from its early stages, where Germany, okay, put this out, okay, to essentially steer its troops, okay, and also use this as a marketing tool across the world, okay. And now it's grown more and it's encompassing. So I think that all the key facets of what supply chain 4.0, I think we can wrap our heads around them, okay. But one of the key troubles that I have is that people jump at little points into it, okay? You know, this is this, and it's kind of collection of little solutions, and that's going to do the job. That's not the way, okay? Thorsten was clear, okay? This has to be thought from a strategic perspective. Okay? It has to be architectured, okay? There's infrastructure to be put together. So this is something that not enough people realize, okay, that this has to be happening. And I will add one big difference, okay, that I see in supply chain 4.0 that we don't talk enough, and COVID-19 has completely revealed, okay. We cannot anymore, for many supply chain, just think of the supply chain of this company, of this OEM, or whatever. Just think about the supply chain of the vaccine producers right now, okay, of the pharmas associated with this, okay. We need to make sure, okay, that basically there's a second level, okay, that is being taught and understand that we are now becoming part of what people expect as fundamental infrastructure. So the supply chain, the vaccine supply chain, for example, okay, is not a game that a series of players will play individually. We as a society, as humanity, have not completely understood this, and we're paying the price right now. We're paying the price with companies that promise things are not able to deliver, by having distributed supply chains all across that don't connect to each other, having people reserving vaccines in 3-4 places. Those vaccines have limited life, etc. They get to waste, etc. There's so many things that we don't do at the higher level that need to be done. Clearly, I'm all for making sure that you get your own intranet together and get your act together, but now we have to think beyond this, okay, at higher levels supply chains. And with COVID, okay, most players that have a fair mind and solid vision will recognize this. How we're going to respond to this and build this capability for years to come, that's still in the air. But to me, that's part of the overall picture, that if I have an umbrella like supply chain 4.0, this has to be embedded in the picture.
I tend to agree. I think buzzwords are around, and when we now saw that the European Union or Commission announced Industry 5.0 for whatever reason, I mean, why do we even have the 0.0, right? Is there no 4.1, 4.2? What's going on? And with supply chain 4.0, I believe we're copying the industry 4.0 paradigm, even so they technically integrate supply chain into industry 4.0. So there's a lot of confusion, and I think we're not there yet to have that entirely clearly defined, which is not surprising because it's incredibly complex, right? And has to encompass a lot of different industries that are very different. Benoit just mentioned the pharmaceuticals industry. It operates very differently from the defense supply chain, automotive, or aerospace. And having one definition that is accepted by everybody might just be impossible. So having something out there that is accepted with a large group of influential people is great, because it helps to build that vision and something to work towards in. But we have to keep in mind, you have to make it your own, right? Your own supply network. It might be different from another one, and you might have to be able to adapt that definition and not just copy it one-to-one and think like that's the holy grail. And this flexibility, I think, that's where the real differentiation is happening.
Let's end with one quick question. So if you were nibbling at this, or if you were embarking on this, you had some initiatives, you were working on it, but you realized that you still had a lot of work ahead. What would you recommend for somebody that was good at this but wanted to be great at it? What would be a practical or pragmatic first step, or some examples of some practical or pragmatic first steps?
Thorsten, you want to start? I've started
Sure.
shot, so.
Sure. I think a company that has made good strides and is engaged in this, for them, this question is not such a big problem, I believe, because they, with each progress that they made in this transformation, new problems arise, new visions arise, and they might already have that roadmap developed throughout the process. The hardest part is starting, or being caught in a dead end, so to speak. But once you get momentum, I believe the goals will be more and more ambitious. So I would say continue doing what you're doing, right?
If I have to add, I think this is an excellent answer, but there are two things that pop in my mind. One is to be great at something, you must put enormous hours into it, and a lot of practice, of training, in a lot of development and all that. So don't think because you have a first result that you've got it. Okay? Yeah, you got in the game. Okay, but now you need more. So that's first thing. So that once companies understand this, then they understand it's more of a journey rather than an event. Okay, essentially, or small project. So that'd be a good thing. But I think the most important that will drive companies in institutions or whatever is around capabilities that must be developed so that we're going to survive, we're going to thrive, and we're going to become what we can best become as companies. So essentially, to me, that's really the game. When you've got this in front of you that keeps evolving and pulling us forward, then it's much easier to justify things changes when somebody does not see forward is very hard to deal with. I was dealing with a company, that was like almost 20 years ago, and we proposed to that company quite a change. Okay, its supply chain, it would have put them in a great spot. Well, it took them 10 years to realize, okay, that in fact that was a good move, and then they called us back 10 years later, okay, to say, well, we believe that we're now ready to do these things, okay, but it was not technology. It was in the minds of people, okay, starting with the CEO and all the way down, and not just starting with the CEO because this was pretty open, okay, but with all the intermediary staff, etc., their vision of the world, how this was going on. Took a lot of time going there. So somehow, okay, making sure that you link, okay, the fact that what you do is not the best, that it can be much improved, and look also, and I think getting fearful is also important, okay, and like it or not, take companies like Uber and Lyft, okay, they have completely in a few years thrown out the window an industry that had been there for literally hundreds of years. Okay, I refer all kind of versions of the taxi industry. Okay, in there. So it just didn't take a decade. It was very short. It was drastic. It was hurtful, etc. So there are many examples of this like now. So that be careful when it comes hard, it comes and it's tough, and it can throw you completely out the window. So that's the fearful side. The other part is, well, if you are in many ways, okay, there are unicorns, there are all kind of other companies that are able to think differently and are hitting the market with wow new ways. And why is it not your company? Why is it not you as an industrial systems engineer that has been fighting to get there, instead of sticking just technical, but getting into helping shape the future of your organization? I think that those are important.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. And thank both of you for being patient, number one, and trusting that we'd pull this off today, number two, and being flexible and agile. And of course, to our attendees also, I think even though we had a delayed start, I think it went really well. You both did a great job presenting your points of view, and the Q&A and the dialogue at the end was wonderful. Thank you for taking time to do this today.
Yeah, thanks for organizing and having us.
Yeah, thank you, and been a pleasure.
Be safe and healthy.